You're listening to What No One Told Us, a podcast about the stuff we carry, the stories we live by, and the things we wish someone had said out loud. Real conversations, no quick fixes, just a space to pause, reflect, and maybe feel a little less alone. So whether you're on a walk, making the school run, hiding with a cuppa, or on the long drive to work, settle in. We are glad you're here.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, Lloyd. How are you?
Bit chilly this morning, bit of a temperature drop. I had my scarf on earlier, but I thought I'd take it off. I looked a bit too wussy, bit too sissy. I noticed you've still got yours on though.
I found this. I'm in my daughter's room, and I found this that's quite warm.
Oh,
I don't know if I look like I'm in the middle of winter, but the sun is shining. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful here.
yeah, it is a beautiful day. I went out for a walk very early this morning, and it was cold, but could just see the sun sort of peeking up over the horizon, and yeah, it's a pretty amazing scene. Cold, but very, very how do you say, crispy, but really peaceful as well. Like it's that time of the day where people are not quite awake yet, and it's very quiet, and it's that time just before the first light is just coming over the hill. And I was walking with my wife, and yeah, we both commented on just how nice a start to the day it is to do that. And she said to me, she was like, oh, whenever I do this walk, I always feel like clear in my head. And she actually does this walk every day, and she invited me along this morning. And I also felt the same way. And it's interesting, sometimes when we're sitting inside an office or a house or wherever we are, we've got walls around us, and often we can sort of feel a bit kind of hemmed in. But then when we go outside, it's almost like it expands. And that's why I was sharing with her in that moment that, often when we are feeling like we're not really clear, or we're having a bit of uncertainty or anxiety or something like that, sometimes the best thing is to get outside, because it just removes the roof, right? And then all of a sudden you've just got nothing between the top of your head and the stars above. And it's almost like that gives it that room for that energy to just kind of pass through. And then I think combined with the walking as well, the body's kind of doing a physical thing. You're getting some nice cool, cold breaths in, and the body's starting to sort of respond. So that was the experience this morning.
Beautiful.
And now, yeah, in Tauranga, it's a beautiful day. I can see it's a beautiful day there too.
Yeah. I get what you say, and even though we started the conversation with the weather topic, that is a very sort of mundane conversation, but you took it to a sensation about that and what you do with that. And yeah, I'm lucky that lucky, and I created it as well. I'm living in a house with 9 people, and and it overlooks the ocean and the sunrise. And I was commenting to one of my flatmates this morning about how lucky is to every day have access to the sunrise, like, and to the ray of morning, what's happening, and the ocean and the green, and yeah, and very quiet around here. So it it is an instant reminder that this is this we are living in a very beautiful place. And whatever is inside of you, it's inside of you. It's not related to what's happening outside of you. And I it truly works for me like that. Mm. And yeah, and also, yeah, preparing everything for this conversation, which is not a lot of preparation other than opening up the computer and making sure the sound goes well and the camera is on.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? We were just talking about that before we started recording today, that you and I, we never arrive at these sessions with any particular topic in mind or any preparation. And I'm sure a lot of other podcasts would go through that process. But in the spirit of keeping what we do here authentic and open and well, I was going to say that word again, authentic, but it is very much in the moment. And we can often arrive with whatever's on top for us in the moment in that day. And we never really know where it's going to go, but so far it seems to be that we managed to land somewhere, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think the key, and this is part of what's come to me, is that, well, this is a demonstration for ourselves what happened when you are catching up with a friend, and you might know a little bit what's in other person's life, but maybe you have no idea really what's happening. And so the conversation is about that discovery, and what comes up after the discovery. And the discovery starts from any of the participants on the conversation just get in touch with what emotion is in you, and if you're able to describe the emotion and or understand what triggered that, oh, then there is a conversation.
Yeah, that's right. And often just checking in with a mate and saying, how are you? But really, how are you? And then just holding silence and space for them to be able to actually share how they are often leads to some really great insight. And you did that this morning when we first met. We opened the computer and jump online just before we start recording, and you asked me how I am, and I said, "Yeah, I'm mostly good. I am mostly good." But there's also a part of me that I think waking up this morning and um, there was a particular thing on my mind, a little bit of a backstory. My wife and I, we never watch the news, although we are aware, obviously, of what goes on around us. But we never make a point of sitting down and watching the 6 o'clock news. And last night we did for some bizarre reason. And we ended up about halfway through, and then we had to switch it off because it was all just a lot, really. And I think with everything that's going on in the world, I was really feeling this sense of great uncertainty. And maybe I took that into my sleep because when I woke up this morning, I thought, wow, there's just so much going on in the world at the moment. We've got wars and new wars and conflict breaking out in all parts of the world, and you know, um, civil unrest and in the States and Trump and everything that's going on there. And in the backdrop of there's always climate change, and that's always a thing, isn't it? We always hear about that, and continues to be a topic for great uncertainty. Um, and then adding into the mix AI and everything that's happening in there in such an explosive space and technology advancing at a great rate, the impacts of that and what that's going to look like on our generation and job security and future generations for our kids. I mean, it's all like, wow. And we were watching the news last night and then it's all there. It's just one after another. And I can't, being human, and you can't help but sort of walk away feeling like you've been in 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. um, and I don't know, I guess a sense of a bit of anxiety, a bit of uncertainty for sure. Like we seem to be in a time in the world's history that is everything seems to be happening all at once. Do you get that sense?
Yeah. Mm,
Before you answer that question, let me just go one step further and say, with such uncertainty that we're going through at the moment, and a world that seems really on edge, how how do you stay steady amongst that?
mm. Yeah, I yesterday I shared with a friend a video about a video that's in YouTube, and we can put it out there. We can put it in the chat after that if you agree, Lloyd, and if you watch it. About it's a 13 minutes video about a guy Ram Dass that talks about how to navigate or how to have an open heart when it looks like that you're living in hell. And how can you be kind? How you can have compassion, and while people are dying, while innocent people are dying, while there is conflict, when there is polarization, injustice, um, you know, but it's also beauty. There's the beauty. The sun is shining this morning. You have the beauty of nature. You have the beauty of love with your wife. You have the beauty of your health. You have the beauty of your children. I have beauty of sitting in this beautiful place. I have the beauty of the experiences that I had, for example, this weekend, or the beauty of connecting with new people. So there's beauty, and there's hell as well in the same place. And how you stay balanced with all of that. And I won't I won't comment on the whole video concept, because if somebody wants to watch it, it's beautiful. But basically, it's a communion of both, of the balance that, from the human point of view, is the conflict is unbearable. You cannot live on that conflict, because there's no we don't have the strength to navigate through such an injustice. All right, if we stop in everything that is not fair, how do we live? How do we live this life? And it's just unbearable. But on the other hand, there's a child being born. There is love. There's a lot of other things as well that we can focus. But we cannot also live on that, because there's the other thing. So how to navigate into that yin and yang of
Mm.
hell and heaven in the same time. And in my point of view, it is also to connect with your inner being, with yourself, with your with your breath, with your practices, with love, compassion, and it's not accepting everything, but it's about, well, in a way it's accepting, but also not accepting doesn't mean, in my point of view, supporting or
Mm. Yeah, there's a big difference, right?
yeah, it's not agreeing, it's not that, but also, again, we have our capacities to at least influence our own life, all right, and make it a little bit better, and then maybe be there for the ones that are next to you, and make the world a little bit nicer when around you, and then hopefully that ripple effect will get to the
Mm.
wider audience. But if it doesn't, that's all you can do.
Mm.
Obviously, you can take sides on conflicts. You can advocate for justice. In my point of view, it's all valid. The only caveat for me is that how much of your life you put in there, and how much you start suffering about that, and how much you end up on a own being your own slave of your own involvement on what you are interested on, or
Mm.
what you think that is in whatever side you want to have in conflicts. And what I find it is that every single conflict that's been portrayed to us, because that we know the conflicts that we know because of the news, or whatever access you have, social media, whatever access you have, and whatever you choose to look at. And most of those conflicts are polarizing, like you need to take sides.
Yeah. Do you
That,
need to take sides?
I mean, the conflicts have those at least two sides, maybe
Yes.
some more. So, um, and no, I don't need to take sides, and I try not to.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes you get into conversations where someone is very uh, has already chosen a side, and for that person, it's impossible to understand that somebody is not taking a side, or even if even if you're not taking a side, or you decide to look at the conflict from the distance. But then there's that person, then there's another person with the opposite side, and then that could be again another war starting. So I don't know. It's for me, looking at these conflicts is a personal choice, and how you look at those conflicts is also a personal choice. You can also decide what you're gonna do with that, uh, and be conscious about what you're looking at, and how you're looking at that, and what triggers you, what this conflict is more important than this conflict, and it never ends, all right? Because there's people worry about climate, there's people worrying about children, there's people worry about religion, territory, economics, politics, and you name it. There's everything. So what?
I mean, like we are human, right? I mean, it's normal to be feeling this way in response to such a period of uncertainty, right? I mean,
Yes, super normal. Yeah, yeah. And,
it
but
seems like, I mean, I know you're a father. I'm a father of two, and my kids are a little bit younger than yours, and I find myself at times a little bit concerned, a bit worried about this uncertainty and what this means for not only this generation, but particularly the generation ahead, and my kids and their kids, and um, you know, what do we do with that? Where do we go with that? You know, it seems hard to avoid, right? The
it
sense
is
of
hard.
wow, it's a lot.
I always ask myself that, oh, the world that we're living for our children, or the and how responsible we are about all of that. And what I decided in terms of my children, which I'm not sure if I do a good job or not, because that's I'm not very sure I do what I can. It's for me teaching them the awareness of how those things influence their own, their own emotions, all right, and what they do with the emotions. Um and yeah, maybe, giving them the awareness that they have choices as well there, that
Mm,
and in whatever conflict, because we are far away from any big conflict here in New Zealand, and it's hard to have like or to put yourself in the skin of someone that is is living with bombs exploding around, or losing family members, or people
yeah.
having to leave things. So it is very hard to put yourself in those shoes, all right? So um I think it's like, again, gratefulness, help with what you can, help people around you, and a bit of the awareness of how much those stories and things and facts and things are happening in the world are actually influencing you. Because if they influence you negatively, and you're another victim of the conflict,
Mm.
even if you're far away. uh, and and
Well, we might be far away, but it's still our world, you know. It's still,
yes, yes,
we're talking about people here, right?
of course.
That are being affected every day, and if it's not conflict and war, it's AI, and it's the 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 uncertainties there, and the news and the stories that the news talks about in terms of what that looks like for job security going forward and things like that, and automation. And you can't help but think that the horrible what if question, what if this happens, and what does that look like for my children, let alone for me, right?
Mm.
And I guess one thing that I really find helpful whenever I catch myself in those moments of what if, is to kind of the what if, and my mind can kind of get a bit carried away and go down that rabbit hole, but of catastrophizing, all the potential things that could go wrong as a result of this. I like to just reframe that question and go, instead of what if, it's like what is. And just that word, when I say that back to myself, it helps me to realize in that moment that I'm potentially getting carried away with myself. And then it also helps me just to bring things back into perspective, because when we're talking about all these big topics, AI, climate change, conflict in the world, financial uncertainty, um, close to home in New Zealand, rising cost of living, which is affecting everyday New Zealanders in unprecedented levels. Um, how much of these things can I really control? And how much of these things, um, what's really important in this moment in terms of my sphere of influence? And when I think of the sphere of influence for me, it's like I always come back to Te Whare Tapawhā, which is the Maori model of health, right? And the four walls of the four pos of the whare, and how within my little circle, my little family, I mean, these are the things that I think that I can really influence. So it's like what is, and what is really, for me, it's a reminder that what can I do in my day-to-day life, that can make a difference, so that I don't end up going down that rabbit hole of the what ifs. I call them the tyranny of the what ifs. It's like it's a never-ending kind of maze if you decide to kind of allow yourself to go down there. And obviously the news and social media and everything else. I mean, it's not just the news, it's social media. I mean, you don't have to switch on the news anymore to get news. And sometimes you get news when you weren't even looking for news, right? Um, those influences can really affect your state of mind, can really affect how you feel and how you look at the world and how you look at your day. And it's easy for us to become angry, frustrated, anxious, despondent when we're living in a world that just seems to be like, according to what we see and what we hear through the various sources around us, bad news, like a world on edge, right? Wow. So for me, it's always helpful, I think, to come back to reframing that question and going, okay, so what can I influence? And I share a quick example. Last night when I was watching the news, my son came and joined me, and my daughter was already in the room anyway, and I felt the sense of like, I don't know if they should be watching this, like a horror movie or something, a movie that they shouldn't be seeing. I automatically was very conscious of this need to protect them. And I even said to my son and my daughter, I'm like, hey guys, you don't need to watch this. And I sort of said in a way like dad telling them that maybe they shouldn't be watching a scary movie or something. Um, and reflecting back on that moment later in the evening, I was like, well, what was that about? Because when I asked my son later on about what he thinks about all that stuff in Israel and Iran, for instance, I mean, he was watching a piece on the conflict in Israel and Iran. Um, and he said to me, "Oh yeah, I know all about that, Dad." Like he already knows about that, and for me that was a shock. Like I almost feel like he's potentially sheltered from it. And maybe he doesn't need to know about it because maybe that will give him anxiety, or he'll feel fearful, or he might start to get a bit depressed or anything like that, which I think when I look at it, it's kind of like a normal response as a dad or any parent, right? You want to protect your kid. But then I thought, well, really, am I doing him any favors by doing that? I'm not so sure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And reflecting back, I think I I think there's a real value actually in what the experience, my takeaway from it when I reflected back was that that experience showed me that I don't necessarily think it's going to be helpful to shelter our kids from any of this. What can we actually, I mean, they're going to get this news somewhere, right? We can't we can't completely cut them off from it. What can I do as a parent instead, right? And I think this comes back to what you were saying earlier around awareness and teaching our kids. Maybe not so much teaching our kids, but almost modeling how we show up in a world full of uncertainty and fear as parents.
Hmm.
Like, one thing is to teach our kids, but I think the best way that we can teach our kids is to model it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And that word choice that you used, like we can choose how we respond to the challenges of life. Yeah. And me trying to protect them and shelter them from this by telling them not to watch the news, I think is probably sending them the wrong messages. Maybe it's a way of actually just going, hey guys, this might be really intense for you guys, and I'm here for you to talk about this, if you've got any concerns or issues. And then when I think about that, I'm like, maybe that would have been a better response or a better way to deal with that rather than trying to control the situation and protect them, which is understandable as parents, right? Just let go a little bit and go, hey, you know what, guys, I'm actually here for you if you need to talk about any of the stuff, because I can imagine it might be a bit upsetting or a bit, traumatizing.
Yeah. 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 That's I truly get it. And sometimes when I think about what you just said, and I said, well, what do I do? And I believe that I can do that, or after I process the emotion of, I'm pretty sure that when you wanted to protect your children, you were watching it with an emotion that was telling you to protect your children.
Yeah, true. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you were triggered by something that you were looking at,
Yeah.
which is understandable because it's horrible and it's not fair and all of that. And then when that emotion um, not disappeared, but when you started witnessing your emotion, then you could say, okay, cool. Now I know that that was a strong emotion. Now I have the chance to to look at it with a different perspective and offer
Mm.
the space for my children to talk about that. And 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 that's the beauty. What I'm picking up when you say choice, and before in the conversation, I pick up a phrase when you said, if you decide to go through on that rabbit hole, and how many times we can decide to go in the rabbit hole,
Mm.
or we get sucked into that rabbit hole, and then we find ourselves in that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Because um, it will be amazing if if sometimes we have that decision, right? Like if
Mhm.
we can choose to do it or not. And in my personal opinion, or experience, I don't decide to get into that rabbit hole. I found myself in that rabbit hole, and then I need to get out of it, which is the process of undoing, or reframing everything. All right, and but yeah, but probably as well you decide to go in the rabbit hole. That day you said, let's watch the news.
Yeah, for whatever weird reason, we never watched the news, like I said, but it
and
happened.
that, and that's a thing. And it's like, this weekend I allowed myself to go into situations that would not normally go, but okay, let's experience this, all right, even if it is not as healthy as it is in my life, like, or sleep less, or or being a little bit worried because I was in a big operation, and I needed to have that adrenaline going. It wasn't healthy, but I decided to go into the rabbit hole of a little bit of a rush of adrenaline going because I felt like I could act quicker. However, I knew that that wasn't healthy, but before you get into the rabbit hole, okay, I know it's gonna last for 1 or 2 days, and then I will have a time that I will stop that, and I will try to come back to my awareness and to my breathing and to all my balanced. All right. So yes, there is choice to get into the rabbit hole, and or sometimes there is not choice there, and we are already there, and we look once we are in that sort of state. All right. But yeah, it's just again, I think it all comes back to awareness and how much we allowed to get influenced by the outer world.
Right, and I think that this comes back to how much we choose to expose ourselves to the news, right?
Yes, and so if you know what you're doing and you yes, open the news, and if you know what you're doing, read this book. If you know what you're doing, take this stand for something. But if all of that is start to dominate who you are, then you are harming yourself in a way.
Mm.
And you know what I mean?
So, if because some people will say that having an understanding of what's going on in the world is really important to them, and I get that, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I mean, I think it is important at some level to know what is going on in the world because fundamentally, as human beings, we care, right? We do care. We care about ourselves, we care about our family, we care about our community, we care about the context of the planet, we care about the sustainability in the future of our home, of our habitat, and all the beautiful souls that live within it. And at the moment, we're seeing a lot of innocent people impacted by that, right? It's hard to just look the other way. So I think we do have a natural curiosity to be to know what is happening, particularly when it affects the well-being of our lives, right? All of
Mhm.
these things fundamentally, one way or another, are going to potentially affect us. If it's not war, or if it's not AI or climate change or rising food costs, they all impact us. Maybe not directly because they're not happening in a neighborhood. We're not in the middle of the streets of Gaza at the moment, but it's still indirectly it impacts us and potentially from a distance impacts us on an emotional level, right? So we do care. So we do find ourselves, I think, wanting to know what's going on, right? And I think that is healthy. The point at which it becomes unhealthy, and that's kind of what you were talking about before around maybe over consuming or going down that rabbit hole of digging into the information. Why do we do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Why do we why do we go a little bit too far with that, And how can we catch ourselves and maybe be a bit more conscious about our choices in that respect? Because I think these days, with the amount of information that's coming through from all sorts of channels, and now we're also seeing AI influencing and affecting the context of that information. Now we have a thing called fake news, AI
Yeah.
generated content that we don't actually know whether it's real or not. So how do we protect ourselves in that space?
Hmm.
And I put that question to you. I mean, I've got a few ideas myself, but what are your thoughts on that?
Go for it if you want. Because for me, when the source of information is also very
Yeah,
important
yeah,
because we
absolutely.
we accept whatever we turn on the TV, or that's our option for information. we our phone decided what to show to us,
Yeah.
and then we consume that. We have our friends, they have their positions on things, and then we are influenced by that. We have a context that where we live that has some sort of a, a bias because of the culture that you live in. And so I was always question what's the purity of what I'm hearing. And there's it's factual information, which is it's one thing, and then there's the opinion and the and sometimes it's factual information, but it's partial. So you don't have all the data. It's just whatever is being portrayed as the important data, and then so i-
So
in
finding trusted sources of information is a really important first step, you
as
believe?
well, yeah, and someone that you relate to, or something that you relate to, um very valid, all right, and that
Yeah.
you to follow another human that you trust, to
Yeah.
follow, um and also, yeah, and stay on that lane, all right,
Mm.
because um when you open up, there is like, yeah, what to believe and what to trust, and
Yeah,
that's what.
exactly. A-
Yes.
And if that happens that you are you are in a trusted space, but then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you find yourself seeing videos or seeing content coming through because that happens, yeah, now. I mean, things are not always safe and secure when it comes to the internet in terms of the content that we see, right?
Yeah.
If you do see yourself um down the rabbit hole, or something comes up and you're like, oh God, what's that? A bit of sensationalism or shock tactics, whatever it is to grab our attention pulls us in. In that moment you might find yourself going down that space like, oh my God, what is this I'm seeing now? Oh, there's another war breaking out, or this piece of news is coming out. Or in that moment, I think it's really important for us to, and maybe this comes back to that idea of choice and awareness, is to notice what's happening for ourselves
Hmm.
from a physiological perspective and an emotional perspective. Like, I know because I've been there in that space very recently when I switched on the news last night, what's coming up for me in this moment. It's almost inviting that observing mind, just to step back and make some context of what's happening in that moment. How am I responding to this? If I'm starting to feel stress in my body and I'm starting to feel negative emotions, and I'm starting to feel maybe like fear, anxiety, and things, all these things, these negative things that can come up as a result of this information that we're seeing. I mean, perfectly normal and valid response to any human being seeing stuff like that, right? You don't want to be seeing your fellow human beings going through such horrendous challenges and things that they're going through at the moment, particularly in the Middle East. You don't want to be seeing those things. So just noticing in the moment that, okay, potentially my mind's taking over here, and I'm starting to my own story is starting to come into this, and I'm starting to be affected well beyond. I'm going beyond that level of control. And you mentioned like trust yourself when you go into moments of like looking at news, or if you are going into a moment where you're going to be uncomfortable, trusting yourself to have the tools to be able to step back. And I think that the first place there is just noticing what's going on in your body, and then just making that choice in that moment. Is this serving me? Have I gone beyond my original intention? And often that happens, when we're talking about scrolling and thing, it can just be an endless kind of thing. You can just literally go down the rabbit hole within 5 or 10 minutes. You'll find yourself in spaces that is like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that's a really powerful tool. Just taking a deep breath, grounding yourself in the moment, noticing the story that's coming up for you, naming it. Oh, here's that story. A very common story for me is like, whenever I see a heavy piece of news, my immediate response is danger. I need to control this situation, and in order to protect myself and protect my family. And then I will start to go into this like, yeah, rabbit hole basically of catastrophizing and how am I gonna prevent this? How am I gonna stop this danger from affecting me and my family? And then, you know, that just becomes anxiety fueling in itself, and it sort of builds in a fear on fear kind of way. So that is not a nice space for me to go in. Immediately when I notice myself doing that, it's important for me to take a grounding breath, step back, look at the story that's happening here, and coming back to that beautiful statement that I love, and changing the what if to the what is, and that really helps me just stay grounded. How about you? Do you have something kind of similar that you work with in that respect, or like, do you just find yourself avoiding the news completely?
I like your statement about yeah. I like this the statement that you use. I lately I've been not avoiding, not looking at. I was
Mhm.
I do something very, I don't know if it is if I'm being, it's a trick that I do to myself. I just said like throughout humanity, you know, when you said we are going through a very tough time in the world and all of that, and I'm pretty sure
History,
that,
right?
but I'm pretty sure that many generations have also that statement. Like if you were in Europe during the Second World War, then if you are in Gaza or in Israel right now, or if you are in, I don't know, in Texas and you're not and you're not aligned to, or if you are in LA and you know, or you are in Africa and you're in Argentina, or you are in whatever, wherever you are, you always, as part of your little stint in this life, you're always gonna find that, oh, this is very tough. This is what's happening now is very tough. And I said, well, I think we all generations and all humans in a way had, maybe sometimes before there was not such exposure to news, so you only knew what was happening 2 blocks away from you, or or you know, whatever the letter comes from the other side of the world, you get to know that something happened last month, all right, but so you were not that aware of things. But I believe that suffering, conflict, and greed, and all the sins in the world always happen, and there's always been like a, a you know, the feeling that this is hell, all right, and
Mm, mm.
so
And how are we going to get through it? And what
and
is
yeah, and that's a collective suffering, all right, because when we talk about our own suffering to evolve, and I'm gonna get it spiritual, so
yeah.
so
Do it.
what
I
I
know you're going to go there.
so, so so my understanding of what I like to believe is that this life is about its consciousness trying to evolve itself, and we
Mm,
are the tools for consciousness to. So in the internal world of our personal world, our own suffering is the teacher of what how we're gonna get out of that suffering, all right? And then
mm,
learn, and as a collective, this collective consciousness is the same thing. This is a conflict that is translated into war. There's casualties. There's all of that. This is a very sort of a distant view of that without the emotion. Um,
sure. Yeah.
all these conflicts, of these collective conflicts, are also part of that game of creating the awareness and keep evolving. All right. If that suffering doesn't exist, there's no evolution. All right. And
Mm,
I'm not justifying the conflict, and I wish it does they don't exist. And sometimes if the conflict is next door, you don't you won't see that. You're running, all right? You're running
yeah.
for your life, or
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
protecting
You're
your
pure
family.
survival.
Yeah, but you are part of, at that moment, you are part of that suffering that is the natural the rules of this game, which is um, the evolution of consciousness. So um, this is on the back, what's in the background when I look at all of that.
Yeah.
I'm not justifying anything. And then I decide if I want to get involved emotionally or not. And if it is, if it takes me somewhere, like it's positive, if I get emotionally involved. If it is not, I leave it because I don't know. All right. And I don't know. There are conflicts that have been there forever. I don't understand them. I don't know. I could actually have a hint because I got a friend that is very, very convinced that this side is right. And then, or then I found another friend that convinced that the other side is right. And then I don't know. Humanity has been through a lot of conflicts, and humanity lived through a lot of death and sickness. Um, massive genocides and torture, catastrophes, and it's not different now. Yes, we think that everything is accelerating and everything is happening quicker, which is probably true. But we also live how many more years? Our life is how much information technology. So it's very hard for me in a way as a person to judge what's happening.
And that's where we'll leave it for part 1. A powerful conversation so far. And there's more to come. If something landed for you, sit with it. And if you are curious to hear where this goes next, part 2 drops next week. In the meantime, if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to subscribe and share it with a mate who might need to hear it too. And if anything we've talked about feels close to home, or you're needing a bit of extra support right now, both Diego and Lloyd are here. You'll find their contact links in the show notes, along with their socials. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in part 2.